It begins!
With a new Batman film out and a very dark reimagination of the Riddler, I decided to reread and review the darkest Riddler story that I can remember before seeing the movie. The 3-issue arc running in the Batman comic Dark Knight Dark City, issues 452 to 454, written by Peter Milligan, art by Karen Dower, Dennis Janke, and covers by Mike Mignola. The first issue begins in flashback and told in cursive. Boy, that takes me back. Who uses cursive anymore? Anyway, what we are actually reading from is a diary by Jacob Stockman. He starts talking about the ceremony of the bat. He says this while blankly staring at a knife. Yeesh. His dead eyes remind me of one of my characters. If I read it right, then Thomas Jefferson was part of a cult that Jacob was part of, and they're about to sacrifice a young, mostly naked, also dead-eyed looking young lady. Before we get to see what happens to her, we jump to the present day with Batman being the commissioner. It seems the Riddler has a surprise for them. A young, possibly hypnotized young woman who says some mumbo jumbo to them and then jumps off the building. While that's happening at some other location, the Riddler has 2 guards tied up, one of which is about to be hanged. Looking back at this, the one that's about to be hanged, I'm not sure how comfortable I feel about this. I'm starting to get some upsetting lynching images coming to my head. Right off the bat, something seems wrong with the Riddler. He kills one of the security guards and sets up a potential hanging. Killing has never been part of his MO before. After we learn what happened to the young lady that Batman tried to save, we switch back to the olden times. Thomas Jefferson changes his mind, but something arrives anyway. Back to the present day, Batman arrives and tries to save the guard, but as we learn at the hospital, his spinal cord has been severed. Also, 4 random babies have been kidnapped. By this point, it's obvious that the Riddler is trying to recreate the ritual. But why? The story gets more macabre when the Riddler leaves another Riddler leading Batman to a blood bank and an exploding fake blood bomb baby. This leads to a car chase where the Riddler gets away because he leaves a baby, this time a real one, in the middle of the street in front of a speeding Batmobile. After this, Batman receives another Riddler, but with Alfred's help is able to figure out the location. It's the Gotham military graveyard where we get zombies. Wait, zombies? While this is shocking, it's not unheard of Batman to fight zombies. I mean, he's fought some in Grundy several times by this point. Bruce throughout this story has said he feels that he's being watched. And the way the narration is going, it seems as if the city of Gotham is watching him. I find it interesting based off of his internal monologue. Bruce doesn't seem surprised by the Riddler using zombies. I'm not aware of the Riddler ever using mystical means before this or after this story. I do find one moment funny. While the Riddler is losing his mind and gleefully watching a corpse fight Batman, 2 henchmen discuss what's happening with the Riddler. And one of them just says, who knows, maybe it's a midlife crisis or something. On page 4, we get a great splash image of Batman fighting the zombies, and it's at this point that I really wish Mike Mignola was doing the art for the story and not just the covers. While the artist for this is good, the horror feel that Mike Mignola would give the story would really amp it up. It turns out that these aren't real zombies but mechanical ones. Well, one isn't, because when one gets hit real hard, he gets to stepping. Not very far, because the Riddler has a bomb planted on his neck and, well, you know. One of the Riddler's minions doesn't take that death well, and I'm thinking by the end of this, will he play a role in the conclusion? Batman catches up with the Riddler, but when given the option to kill Batman, the Riddler goes, "Nah, I still got plans for him." The Riddler left him another riddle and another baby, 2 down, 2 to go. We flash back to olden times again, and the Bat Demon is still pestering the old geezers. The young lady does come out of her daze, but the old coggers run away and board up the hole with her and the Bat still inside.
What an asshole!
We find out what happened sometime later. Stockman ran to Canada and the others died either naturally or committed suicide. Thomas Jefferson went to politics, and we get a montage of the changes of the era over the years. Okay, so is the comic saying that the ceremony of the bat occurred in what is now Gotham City? I prefer Detroit's yearly ceremony expelling the named Rouge Demon out of the city. We do a 5K walk run while he heckles us. Meanwhile, Batman drives through Gotham and gets back to the manor where he monologues, and once again, we see him go through that fateful day yet again. But this time, the dream has given him a clue to the riddle. On page 15, we see the Riddler and his goons plotting something. Interesting that he said they don't need 5 babies, but one is going to be used for insurance. Also looks like he sacrificed one of his goons for his plan. Meanwhile, Batman enters a bar and is offered a pint. No, this isn't the start of a joke. Just then, a van crashes in and 2 dogs jump out, attacking everyone, and an off-duty cop kills one, and the bartender gives Batman a silver knife to kill the other. Wait a minute. With all this death and dismemberment, how did this get past the Comics Code Authority? I know this wasn't a comic shop exclusive story because I bought these issues back in the day from the local bookstore, which also sold porn behind the counter, but that's beside the point. Okay, it looks like the bartender is in on it because he makes the break for it after the commotion ended. Also, where on earth did he get a silver knife from? The Riddler gives Batman another clue which leads him to the sewer. After getting jumped, the Riddler reveals that a baby has a ping pong ball in its throat. In order to save the baby, he has to perform a tracheotomy on him. The issue ends with Batman, mostly in shadow, standing above the baby with a knife in his hand. Now, up until this point in the story, with the exception of one, when Batman tries to save someone, they just barely make it. So it'll be interesting to see how this turns out. Bruce performs a backstreet tracheotomy and barely gets the baby to the hospital in time. I'm not sure it was intended, but it seems all the babies at this point have been males. That's not a coincidence, is it? After a small pep talk from Commissioner Gordon, Bruce makes his way to the manor to figure out the next and possibly final clue. Bruce does a blow-up of all the locations and realizes that they create a question mark. Really, Enigma? Really? Well, I guess it's nice to know that even though you're off your rocker now, you still can be ridiculously corny. It looks like the endgame will be at Stockman Square. How convenient. Once again, we jump back to the past and Jacob Stockman writing in his diary, and he goes back to the ceremony of the bat. They left the young lady in the hall to die, such gentlemen. I thought she escaped because I remember there being an image of a woman when they escaped, but I guess that was either someone else or a potential backup maybe, or perhaps it was a mistake in the art. Jacob imagines her last moments and he finishes up saying he's near death and deserves whatever happens to him in the afterlife. It looks like the only one that had a happy ending was Thomas Jefferson. He got to be president and he had his face slapped onto a cliff in Idaho. Meanwhile, Batman makes it to the square where the circus is and where he enters a hall of mirrors and meets a goat and a guy with a flamethrower. You know what? This seems like the MO of something the Joker would do and not something that the Riddler would do. It just feels like a setup to a really bad joke. Well, he winds up finding the baby, but the flamethrower guy gets away. Batman finally tracks down the Riddler. Enigma shows his unstable nature by shooting one of his minions before he can kill Batman and by wearing this ridiculous outfit. It looks like we're finally at the climax. The Riddler has Batman tied up and explains everything. how he came into finding this book, The Ceremony of the Bat. It looks like the point of the ceremony is to have your own demon bat slave. Okay. It seems like after Enigma started reading from the book, something started talking to him, guiding him. This is starting to feel vaguely Lovecraftian. Everything so far has been part of the ceremony. Kissing a hanged man, bathe in blood, dance macabre, kill a wild dog with a silver dagger, slit the throat of an unbaptized child, and a black magic Sabbath dance. The Riddler feels that his true potential has finally been unleashed. Right before the Riddler kills Batman, something starts talking to him. The city of Gotham. Well, it shouldn't be a surprise seeing how the city has been narrating the story since earlier in this issue and previous issues. The city begins talking to Batman as well as showing him what happened over 200 years ago. The city explains that yes, he is the demon bat and the spirit of Gotham. His blood and soul has infected every brick of the city. Right, so it's the demon's bat fault for Bruce becoming the Batman and for the Condiment King. Oh, okay, great. That's just lovely. Somehow Batman has been transported back into the hole along with the woman who was the first bat sacrifice. Why is she in a different color robe though? With the building burning down, in just a nick of time, Alfred saves them. Bruce is able to wrap up the woman whose name we now find out is Dominique and get her to safety only to find out what's left is her skeleton. Bruce has Dominique buried alongside his parents at the manor, and he remembers what the Bat Demon said and wonders, did it create him or the city? Was it by accident or design? In the end, he decides it doesn't matter. He is what he is. I am what I am. Well, this was definitely a different type of Batman arc. I've read many Batman stories, and while they did get dark at times, this felt more horrific and macabre. This also felt like an Elseworlds story to me because I realized while reading it, I don't remember this story ever or its elements ever being referenced in later stories even years later. The story was told pretty well. The version of Batman and Bruce depicted here was pretty consistent how his character was at the time. And also the story was paced very well. The art, while conventional, was good and moody enough, but as I said earlier, I think considering the subject matter and the tone for this arc, Mike Mignola would have been a better artist for this story. He would be able to provide the perfect amount of creepiness, foreboding, or tension that this story was going for. I can't say I'm surprised that it didn't happen because back then, with very few exceptions, the Batman art was the DC Comics house style. This story was in 1990, so we were still a couple years away from Kelly Jones taking over the artwork for the main Batman book after the Nightfall trilogy ended. I believe that this story came out before Mike Mignola's Hellboy, so he was still an up-and-comer. So it would be unrealistic for DC Comics to not only give this job to a newcomer, but also someone with such a different art style that was being used at the company at the time. Originally, I thought I might have a problem with the depiction of a bat crap crazy Riddler, but it worked for this arc. My problem, as I said earlier, though, is after reading this, I don't believe that this story at this particular point in time was ever referenced again. Did the Riddler just forget about this? Did everyone forget about what happened at this time? If this story happened before Crisis of Infinite Earths, okay, understandable, most of everything got reset, but that's not the case. I'm also not sure how I feel about this arc saying that everything bad that's happened in Gotham over the last 200 years is because of a bat demon. Maybe that's why this story hasn't been referred to ever since, because every character in Gotham loses their agency if the spirit of Gotham or the demon bat is behind all of their motivations, goals. Still, I believe that this is definitely a story worth reading, and after watching the Batman, if you still want something moody but with a bit more action, it's a good buy. The trade came out in 2015, so it's still available. If you like this review, then please like and subscribe, and have a good day.